Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's session on emotional intelligence. So it's going to get emotional, but you're going to get really, really smart in the end. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I know we've got two great presenters for you, and they're going to be inspiring, but also they're going to lead you to be a lot smarter at the end of this session. My name is Greg DeRoche. I'm President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, and it's great to have you join us this morning. Chamber's vision is to inspire change and lead in fostering greatness in our community and economic prosperity to make Cambridge the most envied city to live, work, play, and of course, build a business. Well, let me tell you, we've got some great sponsors this morning. Dieter's Precision Metal Fabrication, fantastic organization. Thank you very much, Dieter's, for coming along and supporting our program. Dylan Consulting, everybody needs a little Dylan in their life. Thank you very much, Dylan, for supporting our programming as well. We really appreciate it. We've got two HR companies, H2R Business Solutions, Inc. and Nimbus HR Solutions Group. Cambridge Chamber of Commerce has got some great HR companies. Take a look in our directory, look online, and make sure that you use a chamber member for all of your HR needs. And of course, Reed's Heritage Homes. Well, they're catalytic builders in our community, and they're changing the way we look, and we appreciate their support and along the way as well. I'm going to leave you after I introduce our first speaker because I actually want to sit back and get emotionally smarter along with you. And our first speaker is going to carry the ball for me. Julie DuPont is a principal strategist at Reimagine Leadership, where she collaborates with senior leaders and their teams and teaching the skills and knowledge needed to be successful in today's fast-paced, time-crunched environments. As an experienced designer, facilitator, and certified coach, Julie is called upon to share her skills and knowledge locally and globally. Julie is certified in DISC and frequently facilitates team building sessions that enhance communication skills. As a lifelong learner, she is recently certified in Geno's suite of emotional intelligence tools, which complements her master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology and her master's certificate in organizational development. Not only has she won 2 National Excellence Awards for Emerging Leaders Program, but she has also made big waves in a large global manufacturing company where she drove the renewal of an organization-wide leadership development program to enhance its culture and build capability. Julie's passion for personal growth is demonstrated by her contagious enthusiasm and belief in the power of transforming lives through authentic connections and courageous conversations. She works diligently with her clients to increase their awareness of self and the possibilities available to them. Welcome, Julie DuPont. Julie, take it away.
Thank you, Greg. Allow me to share my screen with you. We're going to be talking about emotional intelligence today. And, you know, I have to say that right up front, I realize that when it comes to emotional intelligence, it is game-changing for business and life-changing for people. We all have emotions as part of being human, and whether we realize it or not, these emotions impact us every single day. They also impact those around us, both in the workplace and in our personal lives. I want to clear up 2 things before we get started. First, you're going to see 2 logos being displayed in my slides. You're going to see the GenOS North America logo, and you're going to see the Reimagine Leadership logo. And that is because I am a certified GenOS practitioner, and I use a combination of our slides for various presentations, just like this one. And it's a partnership that I'm proud to be a part of. And so both will be represented, in case you're wondering about that. Finally, please have a pen and a few pages of paper ready, as you're going to want to take notes. But we're also going to be doing an exercise at the end that will require you to have a pen and a few pages of paper available. So just get ready for that. All right, and so let's start talking about what emotional intelligence is. And so to get a sense of it, I'd like you to think about a time when you experienced a strong positive emotion. So perhaps you had a great weekend, spent time with your children, your grandchildren, you experienced a lot of joy, or you accomplished a difficult task at work and you felt very proud of yourself. want you to take a moment and ask yourself, how did this emotion impact your mood, your energy levels, and the conversations you had with friends, family, and coworkers? Now think of a time when you experienced strong negative emotions. Perhaps a coworker said something that rubbed you the wrong way, or you felt the boss made an unfair decision. How did this emotion impact your mood and behaviors? How did the way you feel influence the way you interacted with others and the decisions that you made that day? When we talk about emotional intelligence, it's about this awareness. It's this understanding of how emotions affect us and others. So what is it? It's a leadership and a life skill. It is a set of skills that help us better perceive, understand, and manage emotions in ourselves and others. These skills help us to recognize, use, and respond to emotions intelligently. EI skills help us to maintain the relationships we work really hard to build, and rather than allow our emotions to get the best of us, they allow us to behave in ways that are productive. These skills are just as important as your intellect or your IQ in determining success in work and life. In fact, if you speak to a lot of people at work, I think you could even make the argument that the ability to work well with others and create a positive environment is more important than IQ, right? How the people we work with make us feel has a far greater impact than what they know. I'm sure we'd all agree with that. One thing that we know is this: employee engagement is strongly dependent on the level of emotional intelligence found in an organization. So let's explore why that is. We know that the way we feel influences three things: the way we think, so the quality and direction of our decisions. It influences the way we behave, how and whether we choose to connect, communicate, and collaborate with other people, and the way we perform, how much we're willing to engage productively with our work. So what's interesting about this is how what's happening below the surface influences what happens above the surface. So according to the neuroscience of emotions, we know that how emotions impact the brain. So let's start with some unpleasant emotions. We know that when people are feeling uncertain at work, they tend to make assumptions. We know that when people are stressed, they become reactive. We know that when people are worried, they become problem focused. And we know that when people are fearful, they engage in blame. So through this lens, we see directly how the way we feel impacts the way we think, the way we make decisions, and the way we perform. Let's look at what happens when emotions are pleasant. And so when people feel purposeful about what they're doing, they tend to be more willing to engage with one another. When people feel valued at work, they actually care about and for others. When people feel informed, like they know what's going on, they become more solution focused. And when people are empowered, we see them taking the risks that are necessary for innovation. And so when your teams are experiencing pleasant emotions, they tend to be far more productive. We know that they are more likely to connect, communicate, and collaborate, innovate, and solve organizational challenges than when people are experiencing pleasant emotions at work. We know that the way people feel influences how engaged they are. So let's take a moment to talk about employee engagement and how emotional intelligence impacts it. So according to the research on workplace productivity, the direct leader is one of the strongest influences on staff's levels of positive attachment, performance, and well-being. So what this means is that the leader's level of emotional intelligence will be most apparent and most important to creating positive work environments. And more, we're finding this strong connection between employee engagement and emotional intelligence. Right now, emotional intelligence is viewed as the most critical ability to possess, more critical than other soft skills and even functional excellence, right? We know that EI has far surpassed other traditional leadership abilities to keep up with the pace of change these days. We're seeing emotional intelligence skills trumping skills such as delegation and even financial management. You can always hire people to do those things, but you can't hire someone to act well on your behalf all the time. And in the top 4 list from the Australian Institute of Management, employees have cited emotional intelligence skills as the top 4 rated skills for a leader to have to be seen as valuable and effective. Just a couple of stats around this. And companies with high engagement are 22% more profitable. Can you imagine? Think of how much money you're making now. If you could be 22% more profitable just because of how engaged your employees are feeling, what would that mean for you? Customer retention rates being 18% higher. What would that look like in your firm? We're seeing this topic in publications all the time. A recent Inc. article referenced the statistics that 79% of employees are quitting because they're not feeling appreciated. Similarly, in a Fast Company article, just recent, March 2021, it discusses the desperately needed leadership traits that are becoming a lot more important these days. And what they share is that people are joining companies, but they're quitting bosses. And worse, 35% of Americans would happily take a pay cut if they could get rid of their manager. And sadly, 1 in 2 people distrust their leaders. Again, this is all coming from the way our leaders are behaving at work. And we've seen this playing out in the Great Resignation that we're experiencing right now. Employees have taken a really good hard look at their organizations, and they are demanding more from their leaders. So we're seeing it become an imperative for leaders to craft a culture in which people feel appreciated, valued, and heard. And when they do, they're able to unleash creativity, innovation, collaboration, engagement, and ultimately retention of their people. We know the demand for emotional intelligence skills is going to increase 6-fold over the next 3 years. The rise of AI is partially responsible for that. AI is not going away. The demand for emotional intelligence skills continues to increase, and EI skills are making headlines in business and leadership research and white papers more and more often, especially as our world continues to change and evolve. There are hundreds of published studies and research just like these discussing the demand and the necessity for emotional intelligence skills. And according to the World Economic Forum, as work becomes more automated, EI skills are becoming increasingly popular and necessary. As artificial intelligence becomes a bigger force in the world, our EI skills are becoming essential differentiators in the workplace. And it goes beyond just engaged employees. It also affects broader organizational results because it allows for increased market share, openness to change, likelihood of greater innovation. So what we're finding is that organizations can achieve returns up to 4 times higher just by investing in emotional intelligence skills. So organizations are pretty clear about what they want from their workforce, right? They want strong performance, increased sales, productivity, right? Teamwork, engagement. They want these things. Unfortunately, they're not always clear about how to help their employees get there, right? One thing we know for sure is that it is becoming a business imperative for emotional intelligence skills to be developed in the workplace today, but not sure how to get there. But when we do have leaders with high emotional intelligence skills, what we see is that we're making better quality decisions with fewer setbacks. We're getting more resilience in our people so they continue to provide good work despite the workplace challenges we're all facing during and post-pandemic. And of course, when we and our teams can connect, communicate, and collaborate, we know the quality and quantity of the work done surpasses what can be done by stressed out individuals. So what are the skills involved in emotional intelligence? I'm going to go through the biggies, the ones that most people are aware of when we talk about emotional intelligence. Let's start with self-awareness, which is really about our ability to demonstrate our awareness of moods and feelings in the moment. Related to that is our awareness of others, right? How we make other people feel, how empathetic we are. It's also our ability to be authentic and genuine. What if more people in your workplace were open and honest about the mistakes that they made, that they took ownership? We also included in emotional intelligence is emotional reasoning. This is not just about making ethical decisions, but also being aware of the emotions of others while making decisions. It's also about self-management, being able to manage our emotions effectively in difficult situations. And finally, especially for leaders, the ability to inspire performance. And we do this by recognizing others' hard work and achievement, although there's so much more to it than that. But these are kind of the 6 big emotional intelligence skills that could really make a difference in organizations today. So what would it mean if you improved how your people connected, communicated, and collaborated? What incremental increase would help you create a productive result? If you were able to have people move away from an unproductive state, like say indifference about their work, and move toward a productive state, like feeling empowered, what would you notice about your work environment? Sometimes by improving just one emotional intelligence skill, you begin to see a shift in how people engage at work. A CFO asks a CEO, what happens if we invested in developing our people and then they leave us? The CEO replies, what happens if we don't and they stay? Right? Organizations know that to get the best from their people, they need to create an environment that allows them to thrive. And this is why it's so important for leaders to be aware of the emotional state they develop in themselves and in their people on a daily basis. Ultimately, emotional intelligence skills target how you show up, and how you show up is critical to success in anything related to people. Simon Sinek says, right, 100% of your customers are people, 100% of your employees are people, and if you don't understand people, you don't understand business, right? We need to get work done. If we need to get work done, we need to be mindful of how we're making people feel at work so we can positively influence the results that we get. So, how can you tell the impact that you're having on others? Well, there are many ways to begin improving your emotional intelligence skills. The best way is to have an assessment done so you can learn directly how people experience you. It's a great way for you to learn about the impact you have and for planning how you want to be intentional about people's experience of you. The great thing about learning these things is you begin to increase your self-awareness skills, which allows you to improve the quality of your relationships both inside and outside of work. For now, though, I'd like to gift you with an action that you can walk away from this webinar with, that you can start using right away to gain some insights and some self-awareness that will allow you to start making better decisions about how people experience you starting today. To do this, we're going to use a technique called journaling. So this is where you're going to need your pen and papers handy to do this exercise. In a minute, I'm going to give you 4 prompts. These are words that will attempt to trigger some thoughts for you. And when I offer you each prompt, I will start a timer for 2 minutes and encourage you to just start writing. Please keep your pen writing until time is up. Don't overthink what you're writing. Don't worry about punctuation, spelling, grammar, anything like that. Just keep your thoughts and your pen flowing. If you do happen to run out of things to write down the prompt and see what kind of train of thought you get into then. Or if you run out of things to write about that and see what comes up for you as you write about, I'm really not sure what to write about. This idea is really to tap into a sense of flow and to get away from the filters that your brain may try to impose on your writing. So for this exercise, we're going to focus on 4 of the emotional intelligence competencies. I'm going to give you a prompt that's going to first look at your self-awareness, then you'll assess your empathy, followed by how you handle stress, and finally, how you might become a more positive influence in your environment. And we're going to cover all of this in 8 minutes. Now, this might feel a little unusual to you, but especially if you've never done this before, but it can be a very powerful experience, and many people love it. You just have to trust the process. All right. So get your pen ready. And when I show you the first prompt, I will set the timer for 2 minutes and we'll let you know when to stop. Again, don't overthink, don't punctuate or correct, just keep writing. Ready? Here's your first prompt. I get really irritated when. 2 minutes, go. All right, time is up. Now on to our next prompt. One way I could be more empathetic with my colleagues is, again, I'll set the timer. I'll let you know when to stop writing. Don't overthink, don't punctuate or correct, just keep writing. One way I could be more empathetic with my colleagues is, go. All right, time is up. On to the next prompt. Again, I'll reset the timer. You're going to write about the next time I begin to feel stressed, the best thing I can do is. Go ahead. Stop wherever you are and on to our final prompt. I can have a more positive impact on my team by, again, don't correct or punctuate. Go ahead. All right, and stop where you are. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is take a moment to read back over the pages of what you wrote. And as you read through them, ask yourself these questions. What does this tell me about how I deal with myself? What does this tell me about how I deal with others? How do I want to behave for the rest of the day today? And how do I want to show up differently to have a positive impact on those around me? As you ponder those questions, I just want to take a moment to talk about the research around journaling and how it has found to be a very beneficial exercise in many ways, from helping to manage stress to improving problem solving and memory and even physical health. It's been used with pain management and is an amazing self-awareness tool as it boosts your mood and gives you a sense of who you are and where you're going. So as you leave here today and after you hear Laura's presentation, I'd like you to begin thinking about how your teams are feeling and how that's translating to their performance. Coming off of the heels of a pandemic, how are people coping with the changes that they've had to endure and are still having to endure going forward? I'd like you to pay attention to how you manage yourself in situations and how you might increase your effectiveness as you become less reactive and more responsive to what happens around you. Result being a workforce that sees you as an aware, authentic, and empowering leader. And of course, the benefits of leaders with those qualities are seen in the results of some of the most productive and effective organizations. So the key to remember is this: the way you show up, the behavior you choose to engage in when you act with people, determines the way they feel. And the way they feel determines the extent to which they engage, and that impacts the outcome of that relationship. So whether it's your direct boss, your reports, your spouse, your children, friends, the person at the checkout counter, you choose every day how you want to be in the world, and the choices that you make shape your world and mine. And this is what emotional intelligence is all about. Thank you so much for coming today. If you have any questions about emotional intelligence, please go ahead and put them into the chat Q&A box, and we'll be sure to address them at the end. For now, though, I'd like to introduce Laura Falvey. We had a chance to speak with Laura about this presentation. I'm quite impressed at the work that they've begun to bring more emotional intelligence to the workplace where she is. And so Laura is an HR leader that has spent most of her career helping companies thrive and move forward during times of change. Laura is heading the people and culture function at Waterloo Breweries and has had a great career in manufacturing and consumer-focused companies like Labatt, Comdev, and Loblaw. She has a psychology degree from Western University and went there when it was the University of Western Ontario, and a master's in industrial relations from Queen's University. Laura is passionate, resilient, inclusive, caring, and curious. She holds the strong belief that people and culture are a company's competitive advantage and is helping Waterloo Brewing build a new culture for the future and to support its continued growth and ambitious goals. When not working, she enjoys Waterloo Brewing's beverages and can be found skiing, cycling, and hiking around Southern Ontario. Laura's excited to share what she and her team are doing at Waterloo Brewing. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Julie. Let me just share my screen. That was wonderful. I did find that my what gets me irritated list was a little longer than the other things on my list. So clearly I have some work to do on emotional intelligence, but I think everybody else does too. I'm happy to share what we're doing at Waterloo Brewing. And we've been doing some really neat work around culture, leadership. And what's really interesting to me is we hadn't really consciously talked about how, gee, this is emotional intelligence, but after talking to Julie and learning what she's working on, I was like, we're doing work around emotional intelligence too. So I'm going to start with just a little bit about Waterloo Brewing and who we are. We are 37 years old. Let me just move this for a sec. 37 years old. We used to be Brick Brewing. We are, I think, bigger than what most people think. We produce our own brands, and we also do what we call co-pack, which is we make a ton of products, beer, non-beer, mostly alcohol, for other alcohol companies. So that's at least half of our business right now. We also operate a retail store on site and a tap house, which I need to put a plug in, is reopening April 22nd, and we're across from Bingaman's. We have invested a ton of money into our site, $85 million in the last 8 years. We have 2 can lines, we've got a warehouse, we've got a bottle line. We are fully using this space on Bingaman's, and we are going 24/7. We've got just about 300 employees, and we make or can make about 1.4 million hectoliters of alcohol products. So we are going and successful and doing really well as an organization. These are our products that you would know about, I hope. We've got our core 4. We've got lots of radlers. They're very successful. My favorite is the pineapple. If you haven't tried it, we've got a couple more coming out this summer. And we've got seasonal ones as well. So stuff like salted caramel comes out, things come and go. We're like really good on innovation. We also do a lot of things that people don't know we do. So this is some of this co-pack stuff. This is some of what we do under license. So we can and bottle Seagram products. We do Land Shark. Laker is our biggest product. So we've got Laker Light, Laker Ice, Laker Red, Laker Lager. And we're into the world of seltzer now, which is really fun, low cal, really tasty beverages. All this is great. We've got challenges like every other company. So I started with the company about a year and a half ago. The first thing I did was I talked to employees about, how's it going and what do we do better and are we effective? What's our culture like? And we've been this fast growing 24/7 manufacturing company. Lots going on. We went from Brick Brewing 12 years ago, was pretty much about to go under, and we've made it a profitable publicly traded organization. But employees were confused. They didn't know really, like, what are we now? Are we a beer producer? Are we co-pack? We used to be craft. Are we a craft brewer? We had tried in the past to do some work around company values and competencies, and nothing seemed to stick. Our culture has been a culture of like, get it done, top-down decisions, super fast, very, very speedy, good quality in terms of our products, but quick decisions, some pain points around that kind of stuff. Some of the stuff was no longer working. So good when we were a little company that was kind of scrambling to fill our factory, but we have become over the last number of years a very successful, very profitable company in the area. The other thing that was a challenge for us was our leaders, and a lot of them are new, were saying that we don't really know how to lead here. We don't really know what's expected of us. Like, what is our culture? What do we want to do? How do we lead? What are our values? So lots and lots of questions. And so from that, about a year ago, the ask of me and a little team of people was, okay, let's increase our leadership skills. Let's make sure we've got strong leaders. We sat back, and with some of the executives and myself, we were like, but what do we want people to lead? How do we want them to lead? Like, what do we really want from people? So we kind of took a step back and said, we actually just can't throw out and start training leaders and telling leaders what to do, we need to figure out first, what's our culture? So we made a very concerted effort, probably about 10 months ago, to start with a project on culture. So being really clear on the kind of culture we want, the kind of behaviors we want from people, what do we value as a company, and then through that, how will our leaders act and how will they lead? So we created a culture team. We actually called it a tiger team. We pulled 10 people together, and the team was led by the head of sales and me. And the 10 people were from all different parts of the company, all levels in the company. So we had 2 guys that, one was a warehouse worker and one was a brewing operator. And everybody volunteered. So everybody wanted to be part of this team to help us figure out what we want us to do in terms of company culture. And we were tasked with defining the culture of our future. What was interesting was it wasn't like we needed to throw out our culture. It was a very, really interesting exercise on like, okay, what's good about our culture? What's working? And then what do we want to move towards? So, and it's interesting, I go back to Julie's presentation, and it really hit me when you were presenting, Julie, that some of what we wanted to do was to move away from some of these negative emotions that you talked about. So things like blame and reaction, stress, and move towards more pleasant stuff. So we didn't really consciously do that, but as you were talking earlier, I thought that's kind of what we were looking at doing. We wanted to build a culture that built on, our speed and our get it done and our work together attitude, but be more sort of positive and using your word pleasant in terms of our emotions. So we wanted to drive more engagement, more innovation, more solutions. So we needed really some more positivity in our culture. What we did through this group was we got a lot of alignment. So, the 10 of us went away, and this took us several months to do, but we realized if we just came up with what we thought the culture should be, we were going to fail, as we had some failures in the past. So we got alignment at all levels, and there was a lot of work we did working with executives, because we knew that our top officers of the company needed to live and breathe and support what we claimed was the culture we want, because we all know that as top leaders of the company, they drive the culture the most. What they say counts. So we got them involved and got them really engaged. We worked with our directors. We worked with really everybody in the company. So we did surveys, we talked to people, and really all this was about driving, like I said, growth, driving engagement, driving retention, and eventually drive leadership. But we wanted to put a line in the sand and talk about the culture that we want. So what came out of it is this, and this is what we call our brew house. I'm not going to talk too much about the whole thing, but we realized that, we needed to figure out culture, but we also needed to figure out purpose, and we needed to figure out some strategies, and we wanted to make sure that we had essentially a plan on a page that our employees could clearly see and clearly line up to. So if I start at the bottom, our purpose is there. So if you can see it at the very bottom right, it says we brew memories. That's what really galvanized our team and galvanized our employees when we put this together, because they were like, we make beer. We do something that's really positive. We sometimes say we're not saving lives. We make beer, and ultimately it's fun. It helps people celebrate. We make people have memories, and it's a really wonderful thing that we do. The 4 T's, which is at the bottom, is a real foundation of what we do as a company. So that is a lot of what our team did, was we figured out these 4 T's. And we love the 4 T's. They're easy to remember. People talk about it all the time now, but it's transparency, tenacity, trust, and together. So those 4 things define our culture. They define our behaviors. We actually threw out old competencies. We threw out values. And we now just talk about these 4 T's. And it's been quite remarkable what's happened out of this. And I'll talk about that in a moment. The 5, those are our tanks. So we have tanks outside and inside of our building. That's what they actually look like. Those are our strategic pillars. So that's, and I'll go pretty quickly through it, but people, our owner brands, so the Waterloo Brewing brands and innovation. We are a manufacturing distribution company. So the middle pillar is operational excellence. You probably can't even read it, but it talks about co-manufacturing or co-pack, and then focus on community and environment. So we've clearly said to people, these are the 5 things that we focus on as a company. And that question that I asked earlier that people were asking about, are we co-pack? Are we a craft brewer? Are we, making our own beer? Yes, we're all of those things. And we've said to people, yes, we are all of those things. So no confusion any longer. The top of it is our aspiration. So, we win big together for a better Ontario. That is about, as we do all of the things at the bottom of our house, we will be better. We will be profitable. We will be a great place to work. And we will do things like be supportive in the community. So we're doing a lot of this great stuff now, but that is our aspiration. Like that, I know George Croft has talked about leaving a legacy, and if we as a company are as we want to be, we will be even better in the Waterloo community. This is a lot of words, so I'm not going to go through all this, but these are our 4 T's, and these are posted all throughout the building. These are the foundation of our culture. What we found really interesting as we built this was we realized that we're really good at tenacity. So we're really good at getting stuff done. We're really good at being persistent. But the things that we needed to work on were really the other T's. So the transparent, trust, and together. As Julie and I talked before this presentation about what she was doing, what we were working on, it was really interesting because we realized, oh, this is the emotional intelligence stuff. So we were really good at results, but we needed to work some more on, I'd say, the more positive human behaviors of transparent, trust, and together. So these 4 T's are what we are now using as a company that defines our culture. Some of it we're doing already, and some of it is more aspirational, but this defines who we are, how we act. And this stuff is already built into performance reviews. It's built into how we hire people. It's built into orientation. It's built into a recognition program and training. So this is defining what good looks like. So this was launched last fall. We still have lots more work to do, but we have decided this is our culture, and we've started to build everything around it, which has been great. And our next step is leadership. So now that we've said, okay, here's the culture that we want, we've started working on what do we do in terms of supporting our leaders to drive this culture, to make sure that we're working towards being as great as we want to be. So we've done things like did an offsite. Every leader had to stand up and talk about what we do well on those 4 T's and what we want to do different. So we set the example. We said, okay, we're not perfect as individuals, as leaders, so we are working towards our own development, and we've been very transparent about what we're doing as individuals. Everybody in their performance reviews has set intentions for this year on what they want to do well and what they want to do differently around those 4 T's. We have, people would call it peer mentoring. We call it workout partners. So we've got partners that are in our leadership group that help each other and call each other on what we're doing well and what we're not doing so well around our own 4 T's. We are using them to work between teams and make sure that our teams are holding each other accountable and supporting each other and working well together. And now what we're doing specifically around training is we're building and resourcing leadership training to support the 4 T's. So the 4 T's have become our backbone when we talk about culture, when we talk about behaviors, when we talk about how we lead and manage people. Lessons learned, because I think I've got a minute before I wrap up. Really, it's figure out your culture first. And this was a significant amount of work for us, and we're pretty proud of what we've done because that's what we want to be. And so now we know what our leaders need to do, and we know what our goals are. A big learning out of this is when you talk about performance is not just results. Performance is behaviors and results together. And that's really come out of this 4 T exercise. I think as a company, when we talked about performance historically, we talked more about results. And we know the behaviors are really what drive, engagement and innovation. They drive retention, all that positive stuff that we need to be successful as a company. That third bullet, we know behavior change is a journey. And as much as we've said, yep, this is the culture that we want, it takes time and it takes work, and we're still working through it. Getting people involved in the solution is hugely important. And as I said, we tried this in the past, it didn't always work. And I think this time it worked because we got everybody involved in it. And then my last point is just, leadership behaviors. It really is a lot about emotional intelligence. So tying back to Julie's presentation and all that wonderful information she shared. Being a leader really is about emotional intelligence. So I'm happy to share that. I think we're turning back to Julie and Caitlin for questions. So I'll turn it back to them.
Thanks so much, Laura, for your presentation. It's very encouraging to see what Waterloo Brewing is doing with the 4 Ts, with having clarified culture, purpose, vision. I mean, that's wonderful stuff for sure, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to open it up for questions. Unfortunately, we kind of ran out of time with the journaling exercise, because I would have loved to actually have given you time to work through those 4 questions I asked at the end so that you can assess what came up for you around that. But I would be very curious in hearing about, how you found that process, what came up for you, or any other questions you have for either Laura or myself around emotional intelligence and culture at work, and how we're kind of blending these things together to see some positive results. Go ahead and add it either in the chat or in the Q&A box. I don't see anything quite yet. Don't want to put you on the spot, Laura, but were there any questions that came up for you during my presentation? Is there anything that I might clarify?
A question for you is, can you teach emotional intelligence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is. I mean, if you think about when I showed the circle and I kind of explained what each one is, those things are observable. They're observable behaviors. They are things that we can see people doing, right? So when it's something is behavior-based, that means it is skill-based, it can be taught. So it's much less about, your personality. Some people say, well, it's your character. You're either born with it or you're not. And I strongly disagree, because I have actually worked with leaders who have gained in self-awareness, who have gained in social awareness, and been able to actually see the impact that their behavior has on others, and then work to change it. So absolutely, it can be taught, for sure. Thank you for asking that. I did see some things coming through in the Q&A in the chat. So if we start with the first question in the chat from Zach, what can we do as leaders to better our own emotional intelligence? Thank you. That's a great question. There are a few things that you can do. The best thing, the most effective in my experience, has been to have an emotional intelligence 360 done. So this gives you a chance to assess yourself, but it also allows you to get some direct feedback that is anonymous from the people that you work with. So your boss, your direct reports, your coworkers, and what they do is they assess you on your emotional intelligence skills, and then you get a report back that allows you to see, here's how people say that you're landing on them. Here's their experience of you. And of course, there are some numbers, right, that kind of summarize the questions, but there's also some open-ended statements that are allowed to be made, right? So people can actually comment, which allow to bring the numbers to life a little. And what people find is that process is very eye-opening, right? They look at how they rated themselves and then see how other people rated them. And sometimes there's like this, oh, I didn't realize that this thing that I thought I did really well, people are seeing in a different way. And so that is one of the best ways to kind of start. And then from that, working with either a coach or getting some training on, okay, so if these are the trouble spots for you, working with somebody or with an organization who can help you to start actually improving and learning the skills and the behaviors you need to change to do differently. I hope that helps, Zach. All right, Scott asks, do you find EI is a challenge when it comes to communicating through different cultural backgrounds? Okay, so there's a different couple ways I can answer that question. So I'm gonna take a stab if I'm getting at what you're asking. So if I'm understanding, do you find EI is a challenge when it comes to communicating through different cultural backgrounds? And so when I have taught personally, so my own experience, can't speak for everyone's, but my own experience is when I have taught emotional intelligence skills around the globe. So whether I'm in China, France, Germany, Mexico, Brazil, it doesn't matter where I'm teaching it. What I find is that the same skills, here's how you treat people, right? That stuff seems to resonate regardless of cultural background. What they recognize is that the skills that we're teaching are basic interpersonal skills, right? So having people be aware of the impact they have on others. All cultures would admit that's important to have. Being empathetic to the needs and feelings of another person. All cultures would agree that there is some value to that. And so inspiring performance, while it might look a little different in different cultures or in terms of how you're communicating, for the most part, people need, and I'm not just saying want, people need feedback. They need feedback about their performance. And whether that is positive or negative, they need it. How it is delivered will vary based on the person in front of you. And when you have good emotional intelligence skills, you're able to read and communicate effectively with the person in front of you. You're able to get the information you need to behave accordingly. But it takes time and it takes practice. I hope that answers your question, Scott. All right, Brian, what is the first step an employer should take when it comes to approaching emotional intelligence? Again, a good spot would be to, well, when you're saying an employer, I guess it depends. The question I have is, what's your goal? And so what is it you're wanting? Is it that you're wanting to improve your own personal leadership? Is it you're wanting to improve the leadership and skills of your team? Because then it's like, well, you can start with training and assessments, or you know, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about it. It really depends on what you're wanting. Is it that you're wanting organization wide? There are different levels that we can work with, and so definitely, you know, reaching out to somebody who does understand what emotional intelligence skills are and how they can be acquired would be a great first step, just to get a better understanding of what your needs are, so that they can provide something, a solution that would be best suitable. Don asks, as a manufacturing organization with previously failed attempts at culture change. Oh, I wonder if this one might be for you, Laura. As a manufacturing organization with previously failed attempts at culture change, how much effort did you find you had to put in to gain trust from your team as a whole that you were actually going to make positive change? I'll let you take that one.
Dawn, a lot. I heard so many times, we did this before, what's going to be different, what's going to be different. We just kept saying, you will see a difference. So it was a lot, and really we're not done. And I would say there's no silver bullet about, you know, here's the one thing you do. So we've really worked hard at embedding it and showing that we mean it. And we've got some work to do. And honestly, we've got some tests, because we do have some employees that probably are not a fit with our culture. And we may need to do stuff like, I'm sorry, I mean, very, very honest and transparent. There's employees that may not make it because they don't fit with our culture. So we need to truly live it and breathe it and make it happen. So it was a lot of work, and we're not done.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, Laura, I mean, in my experience, right, and you're on the right track with getting senior level buy-in, right? That is so huge. When they watch, I mean, people are always watching their leaders, right? It's like being in a plane, you hear a funny sound. What do? You look at the stewardesses and the pilots to see how they're reacting. Same thing is true with organizations, right? They're always watching, how is my leader acting in the situation? They're always reading the room. And yeah, there's a lot to be said around a leader who walks the talk versus just gives lip service to something. And so I appreciate, Laura, that you're involving your leaders and that you're getting that buy-in. Yeah. Excellent. So Rhonda asks, would you happen to have a leaders questionnaire available to share with us, or how to obtain one? I don't have one to share. If you did, we're interested in obtaining one. I do have, I have a few that I have access to. I have one that is meant for direct reports. I have one that is meant for leaders. I've got self-assessments. I have I have one for how to hire people for emotional intelligence, right? I mean, right from the get-go, before they even walk through your doors and you're shaking their hands, you know, I have an assessment we can give that gives you an idea how emotionally intelligent new recruits might be. And so absolutely, I have questionnaires. If you're interested in one, certainly feel free to reach out to me after the session. Zach Hutton, how do you deal with a boss or senior manager that is lacking in emotional intelligence? Delicately. Yeah, I mean, again, this is, without getting into, you know, whole circle of influence versus circle of control, I mean, as much as possible, if you can hone your emotional intelligence skills, you will learn how to communicate in a way that gets you what you need. And I get that it's not always easy. You can't control how someone else behaves. You can't control someone else's decisions, but you can attempt to influence. And you do that better when you have good social awareness skills and good communication skills and empathy skills. And so, yeah, this is something that by improving your own skills, you're better equipped to deal with somebody who may not be as skilled as you. No guarantees, though. You can't control what other people say or do. Michael asks, are there current programs or modules like Crucial Conversations that you can recommend? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many that teach those skills. I currently teach an emotional intelligence. It's called Emotionally Intelligent Leader course, and I have leading with emotional intelligence. So they're slightly similar, slightly different. Depends again on the needs of an organization. But yeah, there are many many training courses available out there that you can enroll your folks in to get the skills that they need. Lynn asked, what impact do you see on employee engagement of having or not having meaningful performance measures and targets in place? Now, I couldn't answer that one, but Laura, did you want to give that one a shot? Lynn's question?
I'm struggling a little bit with how to answer that one, because I'm a big believer that you do need performance measures and you need targets in place. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess I do see it. I see we've got two different kind of workforces. We've got our salaried employees that have targets. We call them, you know, key performance objectives, and they are very engaged because there's consequences based on the targets and not achieving them. And they're a very engaged workforce. Our production workforce, we have performance reviews, but we don't really have targets. And I truly think they're overall less engaged because they don't see the impact of what they do. There's really no consequences for performance. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to bake some of that in, but to me, I'm a believer in you do need measures and targets for employees.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Thank you, thank you. In the Q&A, Laura, I see there are a few more questions in there for you. Is it okay for me to suggest that people reach out to you directly if they'd like
Absolutely
to learn more about? Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, so certainly feel free to reach out to either myself or Laura if we didn't get a chance to get to your questions. But want to take a moment to thank you for coming out today. Again, another special thank you to our sponsors who made this event possible today. So thank you so much, or this event would not be possible without you. Be sure to check the Chamber's website for any other events that you don't want to miss. And thank you again for attending today. We hope this was a valuable presentation and want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.